Welcome to this edition of the Voicefluencer Show, featuring content queen, Sarah Andrew Wilson. She's the Chief Content Officer for Matchbox.io, an incredible voice company. They are known for incredible voice games, and we are going to get to learn a little bit about her, the background of the company, and all the incredible content that they are producing. So, that being said, let's bring on Sarah. Hello, Sarah. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Teri?
I am great. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
We had a chance to sit across from each other at a table back in, which conference was this at now? There was one of the conferences, and that's when I first got to know you a little bit, and you were telling me all about all the stuff that you're doing, and incredible. And I remember that time you won a ton of awards with Matchbox.io. So you're doing some fantastic stuff. Before we get into all of that, why don't I get you to just introduce yourself a little bit more to the listeners, to the viewers, and tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So I'm Sarah Andrew Wilson. I'm the Chief Content Officer at Matchbox.io, as Teri said, and we are the creators of some of the most popular voice applications on Amazon Alexa, Google Assistant, and Samsung Bixby. We have 20 voice applications in our portfolio, and the most popular, the most familiar ones are probably Question of the Day, Kids Quiz, and Find My Phone. We really focus on high quality content and publishing new content regularly, a lot of times on a daily basis, depending on the voice application. So that's really what we're known for. That's one of our big retention techniques, is having fresh content on a daily basis. We've had 11 million users since Matchbox was founded. We have hundreds of thousands of daily active users, and we're hoping to grow even more in the near future.
Well, okay. I mean, you said so many things there that are so impressive already. 11 million users, hundreds of thousands daily users, and your content is always fresh. So I would love to hear a little bit more about, how do you do that? How do you constantly create fresh content so that your audience is always engaged? And I just want to hear more about the strategy with that. And as you're doing that, I'm also going to bring up our co-host here, Ian Utile, who's joining us. But go ahead. I'd love to hear about the content.
Yeah. So we have a large content team at Matchbox. Hi, Ian. Welcome to the screen.
Hi, Sarah.
Yeah, so we have a large content team at Matchbox, and we have folks that are writing and researching topics that we think our users are going to find very interesting, and hopefully people can learn something new every day from this content. We might jog your memory about something that you learned in science class, 10 years ago, or something you might have learned, in social studies or something like that. And our content team works to find that interesting topics out there to write about, but also to localize it. So topics that might be interesting to folks in the US might not be as interesting to folks in India or in Brazil or in France. So we have our content team that helps to localize that information and make it more culturally appropriate for the different locales that we're in. We're in dozens of countries around the world and 4 different languages. So we really rely on our translation and our interpretation team to help with this content.
That's very, very impressive. Ian, let's get you in here as well. Thanks for joining us as always.
So you and your husband are both life partners and business partners. You say wonderful, honorable things about him whenever I hear you speak of him. Can you give us an idea of what has it been like to have your user base grow, your team, your employee, your contractors grow, and navigating all those things, but having a partner that you love and trust by your side through that? Can you just talk a bit about your the benefits of being able to work with your husband, the way that you both get to do that together?
That's a really interesting question. So for a little bit of background, Matchbox.io was founded in January 2017 by Joel Wilson. And he did a lot of experimentation in the beginning to figure out what he could build with an Alexa device. And he built, I think, 3 skills right in the very beginning. And one of them was Question of the Day, which is now one of the most popular Alexa skills. Another one was daily poll. And then the other one, I think, was 3 questions. So he was experimenting with these different kind of formats to see what users would really grab onto and what would gain the most traction. And about 6 months into that, so all 3 of those skills required new content every day. So Joel saw at the very beginning that retention was going to be a huge factor, and how could you retain users from day to day? And he saw the opportunity, like if you give people something new every day, they're going to want to come back to their smart speaker. So about 6 months into this, question of the day in particular really gained traction, and he was having a hard time keeping up with writing the content and then doing the development and iterating and tweaking and watching the data, the analytics coming in. So he asked me if I would be willing to kind of help just, after work or on the weekends, if I could write some trivia. And I was like, yeah, sure, I can do that. At the time, I was in the music industry. I spent 20 years in the music industry as a performer, as a tour manager, as an educator. And Joel knew that my background in education might be helpful in writing trivia and researching content. So I did that kind of, like I said, nights and weekends, just kind of sitting in front of the TV, helping him out. But a year into that, things really started taking off. And we had to make the decision, like, do we hire someone else to do this full time? Or do I just come on full time, and make this really start taking off? So I made the decision after 20 years in the music industry to join Joel full time. And we've been doing it together since August 2018. And then things really just, like I said, started steamrolling. Is that the right word? Steamrolling? I don't know. It really started like picking up, snowballing. That's what I'm looking for, snowballing. So things started snowballing, and then we were able to start hiring more and more people to help us with the content. So, but how we work together, I guess what makes us work well together as life partners helps out on the business side. We try to keep, when we're working, we try to keep it very like as you would working with a colleague in the office. And then when the day is done, we get back to being life partners. And we try to keep that a little bit separate.
Church and state.
Yes.
Very good. So I'm curious how, just before we started recording here or going live, you were talking a little bit how the pandemic maybe provided some opportunities for you, but also some chance for experimentation. Can you talk a little bit about that, kind of what the plan was and how things have played out over the last year for Matchbox?
Yeah. So even before the pandemic hit, we knew that like 2020 was going to be this year of experimentation. So we had gained a lot of success. We had won these awards that you had mentioned, and neither Joel or I our personalities aren't those where we're just happy to kind of sit back and rest in our laurels. We have to keep moving, just as people. Our personalities just to keep moving. So we decided to experiment. And, we experiment with a podcast, a daily podcast, going back to that like daily fresh content. We decided to, why not build a mobile app and see if we could have voice capabilities with that and link that to these smart speakers. And we created this website that has brand new content every day. And it was just a way, we're just experimenting just to see. We're going to try all these different things. We're going to invest a lot of time, money, a lot of brain power went into all of this just to see what would stick. And then, so we started this, and then the pandemic hit. And I know all of us are a little bit, honestly, traumatized from the pandemic and having to be shut in and all that. But it gave us an opportunity. If you're just, we have to stay at home to be safe. So how can we use that time to really help experiment even more? So that's 2020 was, like I said, a year of experimentation. And now we're kind of sifting through everything we've learned over the past year and what gained traction, what didn't. Does that mean something if something didn't gain traction? We're still kind of sifting through all of that.
Great. I'm curious about the mobile app a little bit, because that's not something that you hear a lot from voice developers, that they've kind of taken on developing an app. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more about that. Why did you do the mobile app, and what's been the experience with that? How's that going?
Yeah, so that's a whole different way of working, whole different way of like developing when you've just been working on voice applications and then suddenly there's like a mobile app and it seems a little backwards almost. Like I've seen a lot of people who are web designers or mobile app designers now get into voice, and we might be the only ones or one of the few that have actually kind of done it backwards. But it came out of a lot of user requests. So we had a lot of users asking, particularly with question of the day, asking for leaderboards, like a visual leaderboard, not just, not just hearing it over your smart speaker, but a visual leaderboard, a social element. There's not a social element yet to smart speakers. So we were trying to figure out how would we meet these requests that users were constantly asking us? Do we do it on a website? Do we try to wait for the technology and smart speakers to catch up before we implement it? And we figured that a mobile app would allow us to try all these different things in one spot. So you can play question of the day, you can read it, you can have it read to you, and you have leaderboards. You can play with friends, you can connect with friends on there. You can play game packs. There's all these different add-ons that you can add into a mobile app. It turned out even better than I could have expected. And it allows us to, the users can, if they're traveling, they're away from their smart speaker, they can sync the mobile app with their account on their smart speaker. So if they're traveling, they can just play on the road through the mobile app and it'll sync with their account. So they won't miss the day. And the mobile app was just a way for us to have the podcast, the website, and the game experience all in one place.
Kind of the home base. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Great.
You have the podcast, the mobile app, and the traditional voice devices. For the voice devices, is it just Amazon's Echo devices, or do you have the ability to have your games go onto more devices? Are you looking toward other opportunities? Are people using Apple Siri shortcuts, or are you, so help us understand, because you have these different locations. How about just in the voice space? What are the options for people?
Yeah, so we're in for smart speakers, not just smart speakers. We're on the Amazon Echo devices. We're on Google Assistant and Samsung Bixby. And what I've discovered is, Google Assistant, if you play on that, you can play on a Google Assistant, the smart speaker itself, but a lot of people play on their phones. And that has broadened our audience tremendously, because a lot of people, particularly in Latin America, will play on their phones. They'll play through Google Assistant on their phone. So that makes it very much more accessible. Same thing with Samsung Bixby as well. That's on Samsung phones and maybe even refrigerators and Samsung appliances. So again, as we expanded from Amazon devices to Google devices to Samsung devices, it was just another way to see what's going to gain traction. Where are the users? How are people using voice? It's not just smart speakers anymore, right? Voice capabilities are all over the place now. So how can we reach those users?
I'm curious, you said something just to distinguish. So for those people that have the app, for those people that have an app on their phone, there's also the ability to talk to the voice assistant through the phone without using the app.
Yes.
So can you tell which way people prefer? Do you have that kind of data?
Yeah. So yes, we can tell if they're playing through our mobile app or if they're playing through, the Alexa app or the Google Assistant app. We can tell that. So if you play through, say, the Alexa app versus our mobile app, you don't get the leaderboards, you don't get the nice visual interface. It's more of a text-based, oral and text-based experience rather than pretty graphics and a better overall user experience.
And in the app, I should just try this. That's what I should do. But in the app, are they talking to it like as if they were talking to it on the Alexa app, or is it
So that's
different?
coming up. We're about to add that in. Yes. So the information is read to you in the mobile app, but the way you interact with it, you click, or you click on it. But we're about to add the voice capabilities to it. I'm actually going to bring it up on my phone so folks can see what it looks like here. It's called Socratics. And let's see if you can see here. Yeah. So it looks like this, and it's question of the day. And then you can come over and see Trivia Club. You can scroll up and see all of our game packs. So if you want to answer 40 questions about Greek mythology or Harry Potter or animals and all that. And then we'll bring up here, you can see the leaderboards. And I know that's really hard to see, but there's national, local, regional, and you can see I am ranked 2010th on the national leaderboard. Even though I know all of the content.
That's very cool.
Vetted all of the content, I sometimes still forget what the answer is.
That's awesome. That is awesome. No, that app, the app that you just showed us there, that looks very, very clean, like a very nice interface. So that's awesome.
That's what we were kind of going for. We wanted it to be clean, but kind of festive,
Awesome. Well, I want to be respectful of your time. Ian, you wanna get in there for some final thoughts or a question before we wrap things up?
My last question is about the future. And when you project out your goals, let's say a decade from now, I don't know if your goals, our goals change. But let's just say you want to go from 11 million users to 100 million users in the next decade, as an example. When you think about scaling, what is most important to get there? And I'll give you a couple examples, like technology getting better, right? Just that machine learning, conversational AI, NLP, all these things get better. Or maybe it's more staff, or maybe it's more money to do more advertising. In your mind, when you think about your goals a decade out, do you believe is the most important wind in the sail? Like, what is the most important thing? Is it that your own development, or the tech of, independent AI thing? Just give us an idea of what you're anticipating in terms of is going to give you the greatest chance of success with those long-term goals.
That's a great question. And I would expect that from a futurist as yourself. So long-term, where all this is going is I like to think of in Star Wars, there's R2-D2 and C-3PO, right? These are two droids, different manufacturers, different generations, right? C-3PO is a much more newer generation than R2-D2 is. There are different generations of the R2 unit as well. When you talk to R2 and you talk to C-3PO, you don't have to remember what you have to say to start talking to them. Like, is it, hey, R2-D2, or is it R2? Or, you don't have to remember that kind of thing. You also don't have to speak their language. They understand you. R2 actually understands what you're saying. C-3PO is a translation droid or whatever he's called, so he's supposed to understand you. But R2 also understands you. Different manufacturers, R2-D2 and C-3PO, can talk to each other and understand each other, even though they're different generations, different functionalities. And humans, Luke or Leia, can talk to either of them with no complications. And I think and I hope that is actually our future. And that there's like this interoperability. There's a sharing of data between these different manufacturers. And there's kind of this collaborative effort between the different manufacturers. So there's many, many different steps that have to happen between now and then. But I see that as the future. So for us to get there, we need the technology to get there as well, so that we can start tweaking and tinkering and experimenting and all that.
Fantastic.
I love that answer. And that was a great way of talking about the need and expectation of interoperability. Awesome.
Yeah, awesome. That I just learned more about Star Wars right there. So So this was a success. The Voicefluencer Show was a success. That's awesome. Sarah, I want to ask you two hopefully quick questions here just to wrap up. Number one, I'd love for you're going to be one of the Voicefluencers coming up on June 23rd. We're thrilled to have you. As you know, audience members get to ask you questions. So the question to you is, what kind of questions would you like the audience to ask you? What's your sweet spot? What would you like for them to have a chance to chat with you about? And then the second part is, I'd love for you to just share some links and share some resources that you can direct the listeners and the audience to learn more about you and the work that Matchbox.io is doing.
Yeah, I'm super excited to join the Voicefluencer Show. The panel you have is amazing. It's like folks I admire. So thank you for putting this together. So I picked the superhero name of Content Queen because we are all about content at Matchbox, and I oversee all of the content in our content team. So if folks have questions about that, if they have questions about localization, if they have questions about marketing ideas, and kind of having that comprehensive view of that, I'm happy to chat about that. Also, whatever else, I'm open to different questions. If folks want to check us out, you can look at our website. It's matchbox.io. We have the mobile app that I showed. It's called Socratics /question of the day. That's in both the App Store and in the Android Google Play Store. And what else? You can check out our portfolio on our website. We're also on Twitter at Matchbox.io.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us. It is a pleasure to spend some more time with you. Like I said, we got to know each other a little bit at a conference, and it's just fun to kind of see the way things develop over time. Ian, as always, good to have you here. And we'll start the music here. So again, Sarah Andrew Wilson from Matchbox.io here on the Voicefluencer Show. She's going to be one of the Voicefluencers on The Voice Den, Wednesday, June 23rd, 5 p.m. Love the dancing. 5 p.m. Pacific. Come join us. It's free thanks to Amazon Alexa and Google Assistant. You go to thevoiceden.com. Sarah, so good to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. This is great.